when I grew up in the 90s, we didn't seem to be as obsessed with race, and it didn't seem like
Yeah.
racism was such a huge problem like it is now. And I'm wondering, like, what do you think has been the biggest change, or what has helped this become, an issue that our culture is so obsessed with?
Well, this phony idea of racism, it really started with the civil rights movement. And by the way, the civil rights movement was the worst thing that ever happened to Black people. They have only gotten worse instead of getting better. And it has divided the country more than anything else rather than uniting the country. Because I believe that Martin Luther King idea was to unite the races rather than divide them in the way that it has happened. But when Dr. King was assassinated, that all changed because Jesse Jackson and all the other fake civil rights leaders, so-called leaders, they sold the Blacks over to the Democratic Party. And they made a deal that we'll sell, because for the most part, Blacks were Republicans back then. And so they sold the Blacks to the Democratic Party under Lyndon B. Johnson. And they said, okay, we'll sell them to you as long as we could be their leaders. And they agreed. And it's just been downhill since. They destroyed the family, the Black family, and then they became the leaders, and they've been guiding them in the wrong way to go ever since. That's why you shouldn't have a leader, except for God. But so what happened was they started using the word racism, and they noticed that white people were afraid of that word. It's just a made up word. It's not real. No such thing as racism, sexism, homophobia-ism, Islam, Abba-ism.
Islamophobia, all that.
Yeah, Islam, white supremacism or anti-Semitism.
You think none of these exist?
Not at all. Our battle is a spiritual battle. It's a warfare between good and evil. And we have evil ruling the world, and good dwells in us. It's a brand new reality within us. And so it's not about color. It's not about female. It's about this warfare between good and evil. So you have some people on the side of evil and others who are on the side of good. But Jesse Jackson and others saw that white people were afraid of that word, that they wouldn't defend themselves. They wouldn't say, no, I'm not against you. I don't care about your race. White people cower down and they start catering to the Blacks, hoping that the Blacks would get over it. But it's only gotten worse because Black people have, and not all, but most have seen that they can get what they want from the whites as long as white people are on the run, afraid of that word. And so that's why you hear it all the time now about everything, because white people have refused to stand up and defend themselves in the right way about that word. And so until white people say, no, that's not true, you need to return to family. You need to return to character. You need to return to responsibility. It's not going to get better because Black people are getting worse now because they're not overcoming their anger that starts in their home. And instead, they think that they're getting something, affirmative action, reparation, intimidation. We really have South Africa in America right now. And if white people don't start speaking up, they're going to take your land without compensation. And it's just going to get worse and worse. No such thing as racism, Chrissy. It's about the character of the person, the spirit of the person, good versus evil.
Right. Because I know anytime I've seen a horrible video online or any kind of attack and people say, oh, it's about racism, I'm like, I think it's I can definitely see your point. It's like the person who is attacking, they're sick. They need to find God. They need to work out their own issues, whether it is race related for them or not. I think it does help to see it in terms of the individual yes. choices instead of well, this is a problem that everybody has. And just when, today, I guess, this week marks the 1 year of George Floyd's death. And I remember all these books that came out after that were basically required reading, almost like we were all in a college class, the White Fragility book. There were so many others. And it's you have to accept that as a white person, you are racist. To deny it is to not be living in reality. And it just seems unless you go along with this cuckoo narrative, you're a terrible person. Yeah. And I think a lot of white people are very confused. and maybe they are feeling intimidated or worried, and they just don't want to start a fight or get a conflict or get fired from their job. So like when you say like white people need to stand up for themselves, or like not really fight back sounds like the wrong word, but like what can white people say? I mean, it sounds like such a strange question, but or anybody.
No, I'm not your enemy. No, you're wrong. You need to be responsible for yourself. Why can't they just say that? And that's the beginning of changing this situation. And I never imagined. I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama. I live in Los Angeles now. I came here in 1968, but I grew up on a plantation. I grew up under Jim Crow laws. I never heard the word racism, not at any point, anytime. And at that time, Black people were immoral people. They believed in God for the most part. They got married. Their father and mother were good examples for their children. And they taught us how to work, how to be responsible. And that at 18, especially the males, you have to leave. You're going to leave here at 18. I'm like, and my grandparents used to always remind me growing up, at 18, you're out of here. I'm like, where am I going? I don't know. I don't care.
Wow.
We're going to train you to be responsible. And at 18, I left home. I went out, moved to California, got a job and bought a house and did all kinds of things. I went through a lot because I was learning as a young person. But I'm so glad for those difficult times because it made me the person I am today.